Hello, and welcome to Module 4 of how to conduct a basic crime scene investigation. All right, but before we go into Module 4, let's talk about some of the things we discussed in Module 3. We talked about crime scene methods, search methods. We talked about how evidence is properly removed from a crime scene. We talked also about the parts of the evidence log. We talked about the evidence tags. We talked about the plastic evidence bag and also the paper evidence bag. And we also talked about the goals at the crime scene. So we're going to move on now into Module 4. And Module 4 talks about the crime scene investigator, okay? Some of the responsibilities, some of the duties of the crime scene investigator. The crime scene investigator is responsible for all complex crime scene investigations. Now, say a shooting occurs and you as the responding officer responds and you are the first officer to arrive on the scene. The scene at that time belongs to you as the responding officer. Now, when investigations or crime scene investigators, when they arrive on the scene, you turn the scene over to them. You have certain responsibilities as the first responding officer, and they will take over, and there are certain things that you pass on to them when they get there, more or less who your witnesses are, who your suspect might be if known, if there are any witnesses, and you have already got them separated, and then it's time for the crime scene investigators to move in and find out exactly what happened. Okay. The crime scene investigator develops, secures, and packages all physical evidence for scientific evaluations. Okay. And like I said earlier, the least amount of people who handle the evidence is the better. If it's just you as a crime scene investigator that turns it over to your evidence person, all well and good, but don't have it passing 3 and 4 different hands before it goes to the evidence room. Okay. Courts don't look at that very pleasingly. Okay, so the least amount of people that handle evidence, the better. All right. The crime scene investigator is familiar with the use of various types of crime scene equipment. He's very up on all crime scene equipment, some of the things that can be used at the crime scene to help pull fingerprints, some things to help pull fibers and to help pull wet evidence from a crime scene, any evidence actually from a crime scene. Okay. Another responsibility or duty of the crime scene investigator is to prepare detailed reports on what they observed within the crime scene. Everything that the crime scene investigator happened to run across or see, photograph, he should be able to explain exactly what it is and where he found it and exactly the picture that he took of that particular item. The crime scene investigator prepares detailed reports on the activities of the crime scene, and they are also responsible for all activities regarding the investigation of the crime scene. Crime scene investigators a lot of times will not allow just anybody to enter their crime scene. Now, and basically the only ones that you need in a crime scene are the crime scene investigators. Not if you have a lot of those, don't bring them all in, because the more people you bring in, the more evidence you bring in. But if you say you have one other crime scene investigator besides you, then that would be perfect for you to start to collecting and them to start collecting evidence. Have one person take pictures of everything in there, and once all the pictures are taken and detailed, then you can start to collect your evidence. Okay. The crime scene investigator prepares testimony for court about the findings that he located at the crime scene, and he's able to meticulously and intelligently talk about the evidence that was located, where the evidence was located, and what the evidence may have been used to do or used for. All right. The crime scene investigator oversees the crime scene investigation to include armed robberies, home invasions, burglaries, aggravated assaults, and of course the ultimate call is the homicides. Okay, they are basically in charge of all of those types of crime scenes. And I can't say it enough, but crime scenes, there are none exactly the same. There are none exactly the same. All right, they're always unique. They're always different. Okay. Going back to the crime scene investigator, they take photographs of the crime scene. A lot of times it's better to, if it's one person that started taking the pictures, have that one person finish, because you don't know what he's taking or she's taking, and they don't know what you're taking. So have one individual to take the close-ups, the mid-range, and the wide-range photos, so that you'll know and they'll know that all the photographs have been taken. Okay. Another thing that the crime scene investigator has to do is to attend all autopsies. Either the crime scene investigator or his or her designated representative will need to attend any autopsy that is conducted. Basically to find out this, and an autopsy basically helps to find out what exactly happened on the crime scene. And that's one of his main or her main duties. Okay. The crime scene investigator also completes crime scene investigative reports, any and all crime scene overall crime scene investigative reports. Now, a crime scene investigator may run into a witness that they may have gotten a piece of evidence, piece of information that may help them find the perpetrator. So the crime scene investigator would be the one to take over that interrogation or that questioning session to find out evidence. Okay. If there are any search warrants that need to be obtained, your crime scene investigator is the one who basically will report to the magistrate judge and request probable cause to issue an arrest warrant or maybe a search warrant if need be. Moving on with the crime scene investigator, they are responsible for reconstructing the events just prior to, before, and after the incidents that occurred, the commission of the crime that occurred. They should be able to tell the courts what happened, and all of it is based on the evidence that was found at the crime scene. Okay, so as you see, the crime scene investigator's job is very serious. That's why I'm not laughing in these videos, because it's really not a laughing matter. This is very, very, very serious. And sometimes if you forget one thing, it can cost you your case, your guilty verdict that you're trying to seek in court. So it's better to be meticulous and serious about what it entails to be a crime scene investigator, because a lot of responsibility falls on your shoulders, and you have to be able to explain your way out of that paper bag. Okay. One of the goals or the goals at any crime scene is to locate, identify, collect, and preserve all physical evidence. I'm gonna say that again. The goal at any crime scene is to locate, identify, collect, and preserve all physical evidence at a crime scene. All right. Any physical evidence that might serve to recreate the crime that happened, any physical evidence to help to identify the perpetrators or perpetrator, any physical evidence that is in a manner that will help to render a guilty verdict in any courtroom, okay, beyond a reasonable doubt. All right. There are 5 basic functions taking place at any and all crime scenes, okay? Number 1, interviews, they happen. If someone calls the police, then that's one person that's to be interviewed. If there's somebody who's accompanying that individual, then that's 2, and it goes on and on and on. Number 2, examine the crime scene. That when you get to a crime scene, you want to take an overall view of everything that you see within the crime scene, and then you can get a little more closer when the crime and when the investigation actually starts. Okay, but when you first report to the scene, you take an overall view of everything that's going on outside and everything that's going on inside of the crime scene. Okay. Number 3, photograph the crime scene. Photos are very important, as long as well as number 4 here, a crime scene sketch. Both of those go hand in hand, and they make up the difference. You can take a photo, and like I say, the photo may not show the distances, but you can take the crime scene sketch, and this will identify the distances between one object to an individual or one object to another object. Okay. The 5th basic function at any crime scene is the processing of the crime scene. Okay, and we're gonna get into that a little further as we go along. All right, but I want to talk about the number 1, which is the interview. The interview you receive, first of all, the crime scene investigator will receive an interview, a briefing from the first responding officer in the crime scene. This is when the crime scene is turned over from the first responding officer to the crime scene investigator. Okay, you want to make attempts to find out what happened, what crime was committed, how the crime was committed, and who committed the crime. Those are the things that you're trying to find out. What happened, what crime was committed, how the crime was committed, and who committed the crime. Okay? All authorized or unauthorized individuals should not be entering the crime scene at any time. Once that first responding officer gets to that scene, that's the first thing he or she will do, start to identify the crime scene. And that's when you see a yellow tape that goes around, the crime scene tape that goes around. They marking off so that they don't want anybody crossing into that territory. Okay, anything that crosses over those yellow tapes has to be identified in the crime scene log, and the time that they entered and the time that they departed. Okay. At the crime scene, the interview basically talks about gathering the facts, gathering all of the facts of the information. And once all of the facts are gathered, you basically see if the facts match the evidence. If the facts match the evidence, you can probably assume that this is what happened, or this individual is not veering left or right from the truth. Okay. A lot of times that's what's used to identify exactly how the crime was committed. Okay. Number 2, examine the crime scene. you're examining the crime scene for the what. You're looking for the what in this whole situation. What do we have here? What just happened? What is going on? What is the reason why this occurred? Okay, but you're basing your crime scene for looking for the what. All right. Crime scene investigation is seeking to ascertain whether the theory of the case is substantial and collaborated by what the first responding officer and criminal investigators have observed. That's what your whole crime scene investigation is based on. It's based on you receiving the story from your responding officer, you receiving the story from a victim and their witnesses, and then you placing what they said and trying to see whether what they said matched the evidence that you have collected. Okay. The third one is items that can be identified as evidence in nature is important for crime scene, examining the crime scene. You basically examining the crime scene for evidence that can be used in court and help to assist with a guilty verdict. Okay, you establish a point of entry for each crime scene. You determine how an individual may have entered the crime scene, and if you can get a regress and find out how they left the crime scene, then that would help also. Okay, and you want to take an assessment of the general layout of the crime scene itself. All of this is done in mind, it's done on paper, and it's done in the investigative report. Okay, so the next thing is photographing the crime scene. You want to record, photography is a record, a well-documented pictorial view of what the crime scene looked like when you entered the crime scene. And you have to remember that once this crime scene has been processed, it can never be relived, except for through your pictures, through your videotapes, and through your crime scene sketches. Okay. Photograph the scene to record all items of possible evidence. Any and everything that could be used as evidence, you want to take a picture of it or a video of it. Photos should be taken before anything is touched. You never touch anything on the crime scene. That's part of your golden rule. You never touch anything on your crime scene or inside of your crime scene. You photograph everything first in its position where you found it. Okay. 3 types of photos taken, and I think we mentioned that were close-ups, mid-range, and wide range. And I also mentioned that they don't necessarily have to go in that order. They could go in the reverse order: wide range, mid-range, close-up, or either close-up, mid-range, out, and wide range. Okay. Number 4, the crime scene sketch. This is the other important action that should be occurring on the crime scene. All right, crime scene sketch is used to create a rough sketch to keep a documented demonstration of the layout of the crime scene. Okay, it's a rough draft. It can be, everybody's not an artist, so it can be a rough draft of what was seen, where things were found in the crime scene. You can use a stick man as your victim, but at least you're identifying where your victim was, how your victim was found, and what you saw. Okay. Crime scene sketch may be easier to do than photographing, and I think we mentioned that before, because you can differentiate distance with crime scene sketch, where with the photo, a camera takes what it sees. That's all it does. Now, any details, any shadows, any overshadows, you won't get from a camera, but you can get that from a crime scene sketch, okay? Several rooms can be depicted at one time using a crime scene sketch. And like I say, you can always use a measurement between point A to point B, which you won't be able to do with a camera, okay? Or a video sometimes, all right? Each piece of evidence found in the crime scene should be sketched in its original position and distance from the fixed object in the room. Like I said, we used the wall earlier, but that's exactly what we're talking about. Any evidence found, the first thing you want to do is try to find the first fixed evidence, the fixed item closer to that particular evidence, okay? Sketches are always reproduced to scale. 5 feet won't be 5 feet on your drawing. You have to draw it down to scale and show what your scale is about. 1/50,000, 1/25,000, which is saying every inch here is 25 feet, or and that's what we're saying on your crime scene sketch. You want to draw it and take it down to scale, okay? All right, the last step that we're talking about in processing the crime scene is processing the scene. Processing the scene is done after all photos have been taken and recorded. Everything has been identified, everything has been listed, everything has been tagged, bagged, and just about ready to move, okay? This is the time when evidence can be touched, okay? At the point where you process it, you want to take the picture of it in the position that you found it. Different angles would be just fine. The crime scene sketch of where you found it, and then once you finish and taking your pictures, now is the time for you to pick this evidence up and place it into your either plastic or paper evidence bag, okay? It all comes together. It all comes together. The evidence tag has to be, like we said, on each piece of individual evidence, identified with a case number, the date and time that you recovered the evidence, the victim's name, the suspect's name, if known, a description of the evidence that was collected, and the signature of the person, of the individual who collected the evidence. All of these things need to be completed and attached to the evidence itself, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, we have just finished talking about the crime scene investigator, module 4 of how to conduct a basic crime scene investigation. And I hope that you got something out of this because I enjoyed every bit of my career. And the thing I think about it the most was that I really didn't do the same thing every day. It's not like being at a plant or some kind of industrial plant where every day when I come to work, I know what I'm going to be doing, the same thing. It's always something different to do. And that helps my time. That helped with my time to go just like that. So with that, I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your responsiveness. And I ask that you complete the 20-question pop quiz test, and everything that we talked about here. If you took good notes, then you'll be able to pass that. Okay, so happy whatever you're involving yourself in, be happy. Thank you.